The conference room smelled of recycled air and metal. Commander Velther stood near the window, watching ships dock at the neutral space station. His forearms crossed over his chest in a gesture that meant disapproval among his kind. The Vakresh warrior had seen 40 years of combat. His exoskeleton bore the scars of 100 battles. He had earned every one of them. Now he had to sit in meetings with these soft, pink creatures called humans. Velther turned as the door opened. A human in a dark blue uniform walked in. The human was small compared to Velther's towering frame. The creature had only 2 arms, no natural armor, and thin skin that looked like it would tear at the slightest touch. "Commander Velther," the human said with a slight bow. "I am Captain Jinho Kim. Thank you for attending this conference." Velther made a clicking sound with his mandibles. "Your people requested this meeting. I am here out of duty, not desire." Jinho did not seem bothered by the harsh words. He sat down at the table and gestured for Velther to join him. Another human entered, a female with long dark hair tied back. "This is Lieutenant Hannah Park," Jinho said. "She maintains our military records and history." Velther sat, his massive form making the chair creak. "History? Your species has been in space for less than a century. What history could you possibly have?" Hannah smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "We have enough, Commander." The meeting began with discussions of trade routes and defense treaties. Velther barely listened. These humans had defeated the swarm, yes, but so had many species. The swarm was brutal, but with proper fortifications and superior weapons, any advanced race could win. The Vakresh had pushed the swarm back from 12 systems. "Our losses were significant," Jinho said during a pause in the discussion. "We lost approximately 40% of our military forces." Velther made a dismissive gesture. "War always costs lives. The Vakresh lost 20% of our warriors against the swarm. It was acceptable." "Acceptable," Hannah repeated softly. She looked at Jinho, who nodded slightly. "Commander," Jinho said, leaning forward. "The 40% I mentioned, that was just from the New Haven siege alone. 1 battle. 11 months. Velther's antennae twitched. 11 months for a single battle? Your commanders were incompetent." "No," Hannah said quietly. "They were human." Something in her tone made Velther pause. He studied the 2 humans across from him. They did not look angry at his insults. They looked tired, old, and these humans were young by any measure. "Perhaps we are not understanding each other correctly," Velther said, trying for diplomacy. "Your translation devices may be imprecise." Jinho shook his head. "The translation is correct. We lost 40% of our forces at New Haven. Across the entire war, humanity suffered 2.4 billion casualties. Military and civilian combined. The number made no sense. Velther's species had a population of 16 billion spread across 20 worlds. They had lost perhaps 300 million in total across centuries of warfare. How could these humans, so few in number, lose so many?" "You exaggerate," Velther said flatly. "Or your record keeping is flawed." Hannah stood up slowly. She walked to a console on the wall and activated a holographic display. "These are our records, Commander. Every death is documented. Every battle is recorded. We have witnesses from 7 different neutral species who verified these numbers." "I do not believe it," Velther said, but his certainty was cracking. No species could survive such losses and still function. "We barely did," Jinho said. His voice was calm, but something lurked beneath it. Something hard. "Would you like to see the combat footage? The medical reports? The supply logs?" Velther wanted to refuse. He wanted to leave this room and forget about these strange, lying creatures. But 40 years of military training told him something important. These humans were not joking. They were not seeking sympathy or trying to build a false reputation. They were simply stating facts. "Show me," Velther said finally. "Show me your records. I will review them and point out the errors." Hannah's smile was sad. "There are no errors, Commander. I wish there were." She began pulling up files. Video footage appeared on the holographic display. Velther saw human soldiers in damaged armor, fighting in trenches. He saw cities burning. He saw casualties being dragged from rubble. "This is from the Battle of Jericho Station," Hannah said. Human forces held this position for 14 months with no reinforcements. They started with 8,000 soldiers. By the end, 400 were still alive. Velther stared at the numbers. Reinforcements would have arrived in 14 months. "Why did you not send them?" "We had no reinforcements to send," Jinho said simply. "Every ship, every soldier was already engaged. We fought on 73 fronts simultaneously." "Impossible," Velther muttered. But he was watching the footage. The humans in the video looked exhausted beyond measure. Their movements were slow. Many had visible injuries. Yet they kept fighting. How long can humans function without sleep? Velther asked suddenly. Jinho and Hannah exchanged glances. "Normally? About 3 days before we start to break down mentally. But with stimulants and sheer will. We had soldiers go 12 days during critical battles. Velther's species needed rest every 40 hours, or they would collapse completely. 12 days was impossible. It would destroy the mind permanently." "I need to see more," Velther said quietly. His dismissive attitude was gone now, replaced by growing unease. "Show me everything." Hannah nodded. "It will take time, Commander. Some of what you will see is difficult to watch." "I have seen war for 40 years, Velther said, drawing himself up. "I can handle whatever you show me." But as Hannah began pulling up more files, more footage, more reports, Velther felt something he had not experienced in decades. He felt afraid of what he was about to learn. The viewing room was dark, except for the glow of the holographic displays. Velther had been watching footage for 3 hours now. Hannah sat beside him, narrating what he was seeing. Jinho had left to attend other duties, but promised to return. "This is the defense of Titan Colony," Hannah said, bringing up a new video. The swarm arrived with overwhelming force. We had 3,200 defenders. No heavy weapons. Limited ammunition. Velther watched as human soldiers fought from makeshift barricades. The swarm creatures were massive, their claws tearing through metal like paper. The humans shot them again and again, but the swarm kept coming. How long did they hold? Velther asked. 14 months, Hannah replied. Same as Jericho Station? 14 months appears often in your records. Yes, Hannah said quietly. That is how long it took for the swarm to starve a position out. We learned to measure survival in those terms. On the screen, Velther saw something that made his blood run cold. A human soldier's weapon clicked empty. Instead of retreating, the soldier pulled out a metal bar and charged at a swarm warrior 3 times their size. Pause, Velther commanded. Hannah stopped the video. That soldier had no ammunition. Why did they attack? Because falling back meant the swarm would advance another meter, Hannah said. Every meter mattered. Every second counted. That soldier died, Velther said. It was not a question. Yes, but their squad held that position for 2 more hours. Long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Velther felt sick. You sent your warriors to die for meters of ground. We sent our warriors to win, Hannah corrected gently. Sometimes that meant dying. They knew that. They went anyway. The door opened and a new human entered. He was older, with gray streaking his dark hair. He wore a simple uniform, but Velther noticed the man walked with a limp. Burn scars covered the left side of his face and neck. "Commander Velther," Hana said, standing. "This is Dr. Woojin Lee. He served as a combat medic during the war." Woojin bowed slightly. "Commander, Hana told me you wanted to see the medical records. If they are as extreme as the combat records, then yes," Velther said. Woojin sat down with a heavy sigh. He pulled up a datapad and connected it to the holographic system. Numbers and charts appeared in the air. "During the peak of the war," Woojin began, 89% of our active soldiers had at least one untreated injury. Not minor injuries. Broken bones. Severe burns. Infected wounds. Missing limbs." Velther stared at the numbers. "You allowed your warriors to fight while injured?" "We did not allow it," Woojin said, his voice hard. "We could not stop it. We had so few medical supplies that we had to choose who to treat. If a soldier could still hold a weapon, they were not priority." "That is barbaric," Velther said. "That is survival," Woojin replied. "I performed amputations without anesthesia because we ran out. I stitched wounds with wire because we had no medical thread. I watched soldiers die from infections because we had no antibiotics left." He pulled up an image. It showed a human soldier with a massive wound across their chest, poorly bandaged with what looked like torn cloth. "This soldier fought for 6 more days with this injury," Woojin said. "They died on day 7, still at their post. We found them slumped over their weapon. They had killed 11 more swarm before they finally collapsed." Velther had no words. His species had strict medical protocols. Injured warriors were evacuated immediately. They received the best care. The idea of fighting with such wounds was unthinkable. "How did you maintain morale?" Velther asked. "How did your soldiers not break?" Woojin laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Who said we did not break? We broke all the time. I saw soldiers weep from pain and exhaustion. I saw them shake so hard they could barely stand. But every morning, they picked up their weapons again. Why? Because if they didn't, the swarm would win. And if the swarm won, humanity would die." Hana pulled up another chart. "Our soldiers went an average of 8 to 12 days without proper sleep during active combat. We used stimulants to keep them awake. Many suffered permanent damage to their nervous systems." Velther felt his certainty crumbling. His people needed rest every 40 hours. Going without sleep for days would kill them or drive them insane. "The human body is not designed for this," Velther said. "You should have all died." "Many of us did," Woojin said softly. He touched the scars on his face. "I got these when a munitions depot exploded. We were making bombs from cleaning chemicals and fertilizer because we had no real explosives left. The mixture was unstable. 3 of my friends died in that explosion. I survived. You call that survival?" Velther asked. "I am still breathing," Woojin said. "So yes, that is survival." Hana brought up a supply report. "This is from the siege of New Haven. You will want to see this, Commander." Velther read the numbers. Food supplies, 30% of required rations. Ammunition, 42% and dropping. Medical supplies, 18%. Water, recycled from all sources. All sources? Velther asked. "All sources," Hana confirmed, "including from the deceased. We could not afford to waste anything." Velther stood abruptly. He paced the room, his forearms gesturing in agitation. "This is madness. No species could endure these conditions. You are telling me humans fought for months while starving, injured, exhausted, with no hope of reinforcement?" "Yes," Hana said simply. "And won?" "Yes." Velther turned to face them both. "I do not understand. I have fought for 40 years. I have led warriors into impossible battles. But we had supply lines. We had medical support. We had reinforcements. You had nothing. We had each other, Woojin said quietly. And we had one thing the swarm did not have. What? The knowledge that surrender meant extinction. When you fight with your back against the void, when there is nowhere to run and no one to save you, you discover what you are truly capable of. Velther sat back down slowly. He looked at the data, the footage, the medical reports, all verified by neutral observers. All true. I need to see more, he said finally. I need to understand how you survived this. Hannah nodded. Tomorrow, we will introduce you to Major Taiyang Choi. He commanded forces at New Haven. He can tell you what these numbers really mean. As Velther left the viewing room that night, he looked at the humans he passed in the corridors with new eyes. They walked and talked like any other species. But now he knew what lay beneath that calm exterior. They were survivors of something no species should have to endure. And somehow, they were still standing. Major Taiyang Choi did not look like a warrior. He was thin, almost frail, with deep lines around his eyes that made him look much older than his 35 years. His right hand trembled slightly when he shook Velther's massive claw. Commander, Taiyang said with a small bow. Lieutenant Park tells me you want to hear about New Haven. They sat in a quiet room overlooking the station's observation deck. Hana was there as well, along with Jinho. Velther noticed that all three humans seemed tense when New Haven was mentioned. I want to understand, Velther said. The numbers say 3,000 defenders held against 90,000 swarm for 11 months. This seems impossible. Taiyang smiled, but there was no humor in it. It was impossible. We did it anyway. He activated a holographic map showing a colony on a rocky planet. The settlement was small, with residential areas, factories, and a central command center. New Haven was a manufacturing colony, Taiyang began. We made ship components and weapons. When the swarm attacked, we had 3,000 military personnel and about 12,000 civilians. We could not evacuate in time. The swarm cut off all escape routes within the first week. Why not surrender? Velther asked. Surely some would survive as prisoners. Taiyang's expression hardened. The swarm does not take prisoners, Commander. They consume everything. Everyone. Surrender meant death, just slower and more painful. He zoomed in on the map. We had fortifications, but nothing designed for a siege. Our food supplies were meant to last 3 months with rationing. Our ammunition reserves were meant for a few weeks of combat. We had 90,000 swarm at our walls. You should have lasted 3 months at most, Velther said. Yes, we should have. Taiyang pulled up casualty reports. In the first month, we lost 800 soldiers. The swarm attacked constantly, day and night. We slept in 4-hour shifts. 2 hours of sleep, then back to the walls. Velther looked at the schedule. This is not enough rest. No, Taiyang agreed. It was not. By month 2, many of us were hallucinating from exhaustion. But we kept fighting. He brought up images of the colony. Velther could see the damage accumulating. Walls crumbling. Buildings destroyed. Bodies being carried away. Month 3, our food ran out. Taiyang said quietly. We started eating the ration paste. What is ration paste? Taiyang hesitated. We recycled all organic matter. Plants, yes. But also other sources. We could not afford to waste anything. Velther understood. His stomach turned at the thought. And water? Recycled from every source. Condensation from the air. Runoff from the reactors. We purified it as best we could, but many got sick. We kept fighting. The Major pulled up a new image. It showed civilians working in factories, their faces gaunt and exhausted. Everyone worked, Taiyang said. Civilians manufactured ammunition 18 hours a day. Children as young as 12 operated communication systems and helped in medical stations. The elderly sorted through debris for anything we could use or recycle. Children? Velther felt anger rising. You put children in danger? We had no choice, Taiyang snapped. Every adult was needed for combat or manufacturing. The children volunteered. They knew what was at stake. He paused, his voice softening. Many of them died when the swarm breached Sector 7. The room fell silent. Hannah looked away. Jinho's jaw was tight. Month 5, Taiyang continued. We lost our main water recycler. We had to choose between drinking water and coolant for our reactors. We chose the reactors. We needed power for weapons more than we needed water. How did you survive without water? We did not survive well. People died of dehydration, but slower than they would have died to swarm claws. Taiyang showed footage from month 9. Velther watched as human soldiers fought with makeshift weapons. Sharpened metal poles, clubs made from debris, bottles filled with chemicals. Our ammunition ran out in month 8, Taiyang explained. We made bombs from cleaning supplies, fertilizer, and reactor waste. They were unstable. Some exploded while being made, killing our own people. But they worked on the swarm. You fought hand to hand? Velther asked in disbelief. When we had to. The swarm kept coming. We kept killing them. They climbed over their own dead to reach our walls. We pushed them back with whatever we had. The footage showed something that made Velther's blood freeze. A section of wall had been breached. Swarm creatures poured through. Human soldiers charged at them with metal bars, knives, and bare hands. That breach almost ended us, Taiyang said quietly. We threw everything at them, soldiers, civilians, anyone who could hold a weapon. We fought them in the streets for 6 days before we pushed them back. How many died? In that breach? 427. We buried them in the collapsed buildings. We had no time for proper ceremonies. Velther watched the Major's face. The human's expression was carefully controlled, but pain lurked beneath the surface. Month 11, Taiyang said. We were down to 341 soldiers. Maybe 2,000 civilians still alive. We had no food, no ammunition, no hope. The swarm prepared for a final assault. What did you do? We prepared to make them pay for every meter, every room, every breath. If we were going to die, we would take as many of them with us as possible. Taiyang pulled up one last image. It showed human soldiers standing on ruined walls, weapons raised, facing an ocean of swarm creatures. Then the fleet arrived, he said softly. Admiral Minji-sung broke through the swarm blockade with the 3rd Fleet. They bombed the swarm positions and landed reinforcements. We were saved. You held for 11 months against impossible odds, Velther said slowly. You lost 88% of your forces. You starved. You fought with bare hands. And you won. We survived, Taiyang corrected. I am not sure we won. Why not? Taiyang stood and walked to the window. Because we left pieces of ourselves in that colony, Commander. The soldiers who survived are not the same people who started the siege. We are broken in ways that will never heal. He turned back to Velther. You asked why we did not retreat. Where would we go? The swarm was everywhere. Earth itself was under attack. Every human colony was fighting for survival. There was nowhere to run, Commander. So we stood and fought. Velther rose slowly. He approached Taiyang and placed a claw gently on the human's shoulder. I called your people inexperienced. I called your commanders incompetent. I was wrong. You are the strongest warriors I have ever met. Taiyang shook his head. We are not strong, Commander. We are desperate. And desperation makes you do impossible things. As Velther left that meeting, he realized something fundamental had changed in his understanding. These humans were not exaggerating. They were not seeking glory or sympathy. They were simply survivors of something so terrible that no species should have endured it, and they had endured it anyway. Admiral Minji Sum had the eyes of someone who had seen too much. She was in her 50s, her hair completely gray despite her relatively young age for a human. When she entered the conference room where Velther waited with Jinho and Hana, the temperature seemed to drop. "Commander Velther," she said, her voice formal and controlled. "Captain Kim tells me you have been learning about our war." "Yes, Admiral," Velther replied. He had spent the last 2 days reviewing records and speaking with survivors. Each conversation left him more shaken than the last. "But I sense there is something more. Something the others have not told me." Minji exchanged a glance with Jinho. "He is right. We have not told him about Earth itself." Velther felt his antennae twitch nervously. "What about Earth?" Minji sat down heavily, as if the weight of memory physically pressed on her. "Commander, you know about the colony battles. New Haven, Jericho Station, Titan. But those were just the edges of the war. The swarm's real target was always Earth." She activated the holographic display. An image of a blue-green planet appeared, beautiful and vibrant. Then the image changed, showing the same planet covered in dark spots like a disease. "This is Earth during the war," Minji said quietly. "The swarm reached our homeworld in the 2nd year. They came with everything. Millions of warriors. Thousands of ships. They wanted to end humanity at its source." Velther leaned forward. "But Earth still exists. I have seen it on star charts." "Yes," Minji said. "It exists. But 40% of its surface is uninhabitable. Scorched. Dead. The swarm did this?" "No, Commander." Minji's voice was barely a whisper. "We did." The room fell into shocked silence. Velther stared at the Admiral, certain he had misunderstood. "Explain," he demanded. Minji pulled up military reports, her hands shaking slightly. "When the swarm landed on Earth, they spread faster than we could contain them. They are like a plague, Commander. They consume and multiply. Every day they remained on Earth, they grew stronger." The holographic display showed maps of Earth with spreading red zones. Cities marked in red. Entire regions marked in red. "We tried conventional weapons," Minji continued. "We tried everything. But the swarm kept spreading. They reached Asia, Europe, the Americas. They were going to consume everything. So we made a choice," Jinho said, speaking for the first time. His voice was hollow. "We initiated the Scorched Protocol." "What is that?" Velther asked, though he feared the answer. Minji pulled up authorization codes. "The Scorched Protocol was our last option. We used nuclear weapons on our own planet. We burned our own cities to stop the swarm from spreading." Velther stood abruptly, his chair clattering backward. "You used nuclear weapons on your homeworld? On your own people?" "Yes," Minji said, meeting his gaze steadily. "We evacuated who we could. But there was not enough time. Not enough ships. We had to choose between losing some of our people or losing all of them." The display showed mushroom clouds rising over cities. Velther recognized some of the names from human historical records. Tokyo, Paris, New York, Moscow. 2.4 billion casualties, Hana said softly. "That is the number we told you. Most of them died on Earth, in the bombardment, in the fires, in the swarm attacks." Velther felt sick. His species had strict protocols about weapons of mass destruction. They would never use them on their own worlds. The very idea was unthinkable. "Who gave the order?" he asked. "I did," Minji said. I was in command of the defense fleet. I looked at the projections. I saw that if we did nothing, the swarm would consume all of Earth within 6 months. So I gave the order to fire. You murdered billions of your own people. Yes, Minji's voice did not waver. I did, and I would do it again, because 2.4 billion dead meant that 4 billion survived. The mathematics was simple, Commander. Horrible, but simple. Valthur paced the room, trying to process this. Your civilians. Did they accept this? Minji laughed bitterly. Some did. Some did not. We had riots. We had people refuse to evacuate, refuse to leave their homes. But in the end, most understood. They saw the swarm coming. They knew there was no other choice. She pulled up footage that Valthur would never forget. It showed a city on Earth, people evacuating in chaos. But not everyone was leaving. Some civilians were arming themselves, taking positions in buildings. What are they doing? Valthur asked. Staying behind, Jinho answered. When we evacuated Earth, we prioritized children, families, but there was not enough room on the ships for everyone. So many adults chose to stay. They formed resistance groups. They fought the swarm with whatever they had. The footage showed an elderly human woman, gray-haired and small, attacking a swarm warrior with a kitchen knife. The swarm killed her, but she had wounded it first. Other civilians swarmed the creature, dragging it down with farming tools and improvised weapons. They had no training, Valthur said. No armor. No real weapons. No, Hana agreed. But they fought anyway, because they wanted their children to escape. They bought time with their lives. Minji showed more footage. Entire cities collapsing as humans deliberately destroyed their own infrastructure. Bridges blown up. Buildings demolished. Tunnels flooded. We collapsed cities on top of swarm hives, Minji explained. We buried ourselves in them together. We poisoned water supplies. We burned forests to create barriers. We did everything we could to slow them down. Valthur watched in horror as humans ran into burning buildings to set more charges. Watched as they drove vehicles loaded with explosives into swarm formations. Watched as parents said goodbye to children boarding evacuation ships, knowing they would never see them again. This is madness, Valthur said. This is beyond war. This is self-destruction. This is survival, Minji countered. We destroyed 40% of our homeworld to save 60%. We sacrificed billions so that our species would continue. Tell me, Commander, what would your people have done? Valthur had no answer. His people had never faced such a choice. They had colonies, backups, redundancies. If one world fell, they could rebuild from others. But Earth was humanity's only homeworld. Their birthplace. Their center. There is more, Minji said quietly. Something even the other species do not know. She pulled up classified files. The security clearance was marked in red. We had a final contingency, she said. If the swarm could not be stopped, if they took all of Earth, we were prepared to activate the solar charges. Solar charges? Valthur asked. Weapons planted near our sun. If triggered, they would destabilize the star, cause it to expand prematurely. It would destroy our entire solar system, including Earth and all the swarm on it. Valthur felt his legs weaken. He sat down heavily. You would have destroyed your own sun. Killed everyone. Everything. Yes, Minji said. If we could not have Earth, the swarm would not have it either. We would take them with us into extinction. That is insane. That is human, Jinho said quietly. We do not surrender, Commander. We do not give up. If we are going to die, we make it cost everything. Valthur looked at the 3 humans in the room. They stood calmly, discussing the potential destruction of their own solar system, as if it were a reasonable military strategy. How? He asked finally. How do you live with these decisions? How do you wake up each day knowing what you did? What you were willing to do? Minji was quiet for a long moment. I do not sleep well, Commander. None of us do. But we are still here. Our species survived. That has to mean something. Does it? Velther asked. Does survival justify everything? I do not know, Minji admitted. But it is the only thing that keeps me going. We survived. We are still here. And maybe that is enough. As Velther left that meeting, he realized he was no longer looking at humans the same way. They were not just warriors. They were survivors of a Holocaust they had partly inflicted on themselves, and somehow they were still standing. Velther stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. 7 days had passed since he arrived at this station. 7 days of learning about human suffering and survival. He had not slept well. His dreams were filled with burning cities and desperate faces. Commander? He turned to see Jinho approaching with a young human female. She looked to be in her early 20s, with bright eyes and a confident stride. She wore a junior officer's uniform. This is Lieutenant Yuna Han, Jinho said. I thought you should meet her. Yuna bowed respectfully. Commander Velther? It is an honor. Velther studied her. Unlike the others he had met, this young woman showed no signs of the war. No scars, no haunted look in her eyes. She seemed almost cheerful. You are young to be an officer, Velther observed. I am 23, Yuna said. But I have been in the military since I was 16. So you fought in the war? Yuna shook her head. No, Commander. I was born during the war. I am what they call the war generation. I have never known peace. Velther felt a chill. You were born during the war? In a bunker beneath Seoul, Yuna said matter-of-factly. My mother went into labor during a swarm attack. The medics delivered me while explosions shook the walls. My father was killed 2 weeks later on the surface. She said this casually, as if discussing the weather. Velther exchanged a glance with Jinho, who nodded slightly. I am sorry, Velther said. Why? Yuna asked, genuinely confused. I never knew him. It is hard to miss what you never had. They sat down near the observation window. Yuna seemed completely at ease, while Velther felt increasingly unsettled. Tell me about your childhood, Velther said. Yuna smiled. I grew up in the bunkers. We had schooling, though it was different from before the war. We learned to read, yes, but we also learned to shoot by age 7. We learned basic medical care by age 8. By age 10, I could assemble and disassemble 12 different weapon types. That is not a childhood, Velther said quietly. That is military training. It was survival training, Yuna corrected. Everyone needed to know how to fight. Even the children. Especially the children, because we were the future. If the swarm killed all the adults, we would need to carry on. She pulled up images on a datapad. They showed children in classrooms, but the lessons were about weapons maintenance and tactical positions. We played different games than children before the war, Yuna continued. Our games were about hiding from swarm patrols, about rationing food, about treating injuries. We thought this was normal because we knew nothing else. Velther felt his heart aching. Did you ever feel afraid? All the time, Yuna admitted. But fear was normal too. Everyone was afraid. We learned to function despite fear. That was just how life was. Jinho spoke up. Yuna represents millions of young humans, Commander. An entire generation born into war. They have no memory of peace. No context for what normal life should be. How do you cope? Velther asked Yuna directly. The others I have spoken with carry such pain, such trauma. But you seem almost happy. Yuna considered this. I think it is because I have no before to compare to. The older generation lost something. They remember Earth before the burning. They remember cities before the ruins. But I never had that. This is my normal. She stood and walked to the window. When the war ended and I was 12, people celebrated. But I did not understand. I thought it was a temporary ceasefire. It took me 2 years to accept that the swarm was truly gone. And now? Velther asked. Now, I am learning what peace means. What it means to walk outside without checking for swarm. What it means to eat food without rationing. What it means to sleep a full night without alarms. She turned back to him, and for the first time, Velther saw something deeper in her eyes. Not pain exactly, but a profound understanding beyond her years. We survived, Commander. My parents' generation made choices that haunt them. They burned our world to save it. They sacrificed billions to preserve our species. Those decisions broke them in ways they will never heal from. But you? Velther asked. I carry their legacy. I exist because of their choices. My entire generation exists because someone decided we were worth saving. That is a heavy thing to carry, but also a powerful thing. Jinho placed a hand on Yuna's shoulder. After the war, we had debates about how to teach the next generation. Some wanted to hide the truth, to protect them from the horror. But we decided honesty was better. So children like Yuna know everything. Every battle. Every sacrifice. Every terrible choice. We learned the names, Yuna said softly. Every memorial service, we recite the names of the dead. Not all of them. That would take years. But we rotate through lists. Everyone killed on Earth. Everyone killed defending the colonies. We remember them. Velther thought about this. Does this not make you sad? Angry? Sometimes, Yuna admitted. But mostly, it makes me determined. They died so I could live. The least I can do is live well. Live fully. Make their sacrifice mean something. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I am studying to be a teacher, Commander. When my military service ends, I want to help the next generation. The children born after the war. I want them to know peace, truly know it, in a way my generation never could. Velther stood slowly. He approached the window and looked out at the stars. I came here thinking humans were inexperienced, weak. I thought you exaggerated your achievements or got lucky. And now? Jinho asked. Now, I understand that I was looking at you wrong. You are not strong because you did not break. You are strong because you broke and continued anyway. He turned to face them. My people would not have survived what you endured. We would have surrendered, retreated, preserved ourselves for another fight. But you had nowhere to retreat to. So you stood and fought with everything you had, even when everything was not enough. It was enough, Yuna said quietly. We're still here. Yes, Velther agreed. You are still here. That is the miracle, is it not? After everything, you survived. Jinho nodded. Survival was never guaranteed. Every day of that war, we could have lost. But we kept fighting, kept hoping. And somehow, we made it. How do humans still smile? Velther asked. Still laugh? Still hope for the future? After such horror, how are you not consumed by it? Yuna answered, her voice steady. Because we choose not to be. The swarm wanted to destroy us. If we let the war destroy our ability to feel joy, to love, to hope, then they win even in death. So we choose to live. Really live. Not just survive, but thrive. She gestured to the station around them. Look at what we have built in just 5 years since the war ended. New colonies. New ships. New partnerships with species like yours. We rebuild because that is what humans do. We take the broken pieces and make something new. Velther was silent for a long moment. Then he did something he had not done in 40 years of military service. He bowed deeply to the two humans. "I came here to judge you," he said, "to measure you by my standards. But I was wrong. You do not need my approval or my understanding. You survived something no species should have faced. You are warriors beyond measure." Jinho returned the bow. "Thank you, Commander. That means more than you know. I will return to my people," Velther said. "I will tell them what I learned here, and I will ask them to help humanity. Not out of pity, but out of respect. You have earned allies, not through strength of arms alone, but through strength of spirit." Yuna smiled. "We would be honored to count the Vakresh as friends." As Velther prepared to leave the station the next day, he attended one final event. A memorial service for the war dead. Humans gathered in a large hall, standing in respectful silence. One by one, they read names. Thousands of names. The list would continue for days. Velther stood among them, this alien warrior who had seen 40 years of combat. He listened to the names of the dead. He watched as humans young and old wept quietly, then dried their tears and stood tall. He understood now. These humans did not forget their pain. They did not hide from it or pretend it did not exist. They carried it with them every day as a reminder of what they had endured and overcome. They were broken, but they were not defeated. They were scarred, but they were standing. They were survivors. And that was the most powerful thing of all. Commander Velther had fought for 40 years. He had seen war in all its forms, but he had never truly understood it until he met the species that refused to let it break them. And as he boarded his ship to return home, he carried with him a new understanding. Strength was not about never falling. It was about rising again after the fall. Humans had fallen, and they had risen. That was their story. That was their power. And Velther would never forget it.